You know that feeling when you're standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into the abyss? Your heart is pounding, your palms are sweaty, and every fiber of your being is screaming, "Don't jump." But deep down, you know that's exactly what you need to do. That moment, that terrifying, exhilarating moment, is what Steven Pressfield calls turning pro. Picture this. You can divide your entire life into two distinct chapters. Before you turn pro and after. Is that dramatic? Is that life-changing? Pressfield says you'll remember exactly where you were when it happened, just like you remember where you were on September 11th. Because turning pro isn't just about changing what you do. It's about fundamentally changing who you are. Today, I'm going to take you on a journey through one of the most powerful books ever written about unleashing your true potential. We're diving deep into Steven Pressfield's Turning Pro, a book that will shake you to your core and show you exactly how to stop living as an amateur and start living as the professional you were meant to be. If you've ever felt stuck, unfulfilled, or like you're living someone else's life, this message is for you. If you've ever had dreams that felt too big, too scary, or too impossible to pursue, this is your wake-up call. Because the truth is, the only thing standing between you and the life you want is a single decision, the decision to turn pro. Let me start with a story that perfectly captures what we're dealing with here. There's a force inside each of us that Pressfield calls resistance. It's that voice that tells you to hit the snooze button instead of going to the gym. It's what makes you scroll through social media instead of working on your novel. It's the invisible force that keeps you comfortable, safe, and ultimately unfulfilled. But here's what most people don't realize. This resistance isn't your enemy. It's actually your compass. The stronger the resistance, the more important the work you're avoiding. The more terrified you feel about pursuing something, the more likely it is that this something is your true calling. The amateur trap. Why we stay stuck. Let's talk about what it means to be an amateur. And I don't mean amateur in the traditional sense. Someone who's just starting out or learning. Pressfield uses the word amateur to describe a specific mindset, a way of approaching life that keeps us trapped in mediocrity. The amateur loves what they do, but they love it with conditions. They love it when it's convenient, when it feels good, when the mood strikes them. The amateur waits for inspiration to hit like lightning. They work in bursts of enthusiasm followed by long periods of nothing. Here's the brutal truth about the amateur mindset. It's driven by fear. Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of commitment. The amateur is terrified of self-definition because once you define yourself as something, a writer, an entrepreneur, an artist, you become accountable for living up to that identity. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you started something with great enthusiasm, only to let it fade away when things got difficult? How many dreams have you abandoned the moment you encountered real resistance? This is the amateur pattern, and it's killing your potential. The amateur also has what Pressfield calls shadow careers. These are jobs or activities that feel similar to your true calling but carry no real risk. For example, someone whose true calling is to be a novelist might become a literature professor instead. It feels related, it satisfies some of the same impulses, but it doesn't require the vulnerability and commitment of actually writing and publishing novels. Remember to subscribe for more life-changing content like this. We're posting new videos daily to help you unlock your full potential. The amateur is also addicted to drama. They thrive on chaos, procrastination, and last-minute rushes. They mistake motion for progress, busyness for productivity. Their days are simultaneously full to bursting and achingly, heartbreakingly empty. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface. The amateur is running. Running from their fears, running from their true calling, running from who they really are. They're living in a state of denial, refusing to listen to that still, small voice inside their heads that's trying to guide them toward their destiny. Resistance. The universal force that stops us. Now let's dive deeper into this concept of resistance, because understanding it is crucial to turning pro. Resistance is probably the most important concept in Pressfield's work, and it's the #1 reason why people remain amateurs their entire lives. Resistance is a universal force. It affects everyone from the Nobel Prize winner to the weekend warrior. It doesn't matter how successful you are, how talented you are, or how much you've already accomplished. Resistance will show up every single day to stop you from doing your most important work. But here's what makes resistance so dangerous. It's invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wear a name tag. Instead, it disguises itself as perfectly reasonable thoughts and feelings. I'm too tired today. I'm not ready yet. I need to do more research first. I'll start Monday. Sound familiar? Resistance is also incredibly cunning. It knows exactly which buttons to push to keep you from moving forward. It will use your relationships, your responsibilities, your fears, even your past successes against you. It will convince you that you're being practical, responsible, or realistic when you're actually just avoiding the work that matters most. The key insight here is that resistance gets stronger the closer you get to your true calling. If you're feeling massive resistance towards something, that's not a sign to avoid it. It's a sign that you're on the right track. The work that scares you the most is probably the work you most need to do. Resistance also feeds on perfectionism. It will convince you that your work isn't good enough, that you need to wait until you have more skills, more experience, more resources. But the truth is, you'll never feel ready. You'll never have everything figured out. The only way to overcome resistance is to start before you're ready and keep going despite the fear. The shadow career trap. One of the most insidious ways that resistance works is through what Pressfield calls shadow careers. This is when we pursue something that looks and feels similar to our true calling but doesn't require us to take any real risk. Let me give you some examples. Someone whose true calling is to be a stand-up comedian might become a comedy writer instead. Someone who's meant to be an entrepreneur might become a business consultant. Someone who should be creating art might become an art critic. These shadow careers satisfy some of the same psychological needs as our true calling, but they allow us to avoid the vulnerability and commitment that real creation requires. The shadow career is seductive because it feels like progress. You're in the right field, you're using related skills, you might even be successful and well-respected. But deep down, there's always that nagging feeling that you're not living authentically, that you're playing it safe. Here's the question Pressfield wants you to ask yourself. What is your current life a metaphor for? If you're dissatisfied with where you are, look at what you're doing now as a symbol pointing toward what you really want to do. Your shadow career is often a clue to your true calling. The danger of the shadow career is that it can become a permanent substitute for your real work. You can spend your entire life being almost happy, almost fulfilled, almost living your dreams. And that almost will eat at your soul. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're here every day with powerful insights to help you transform your life. The moment of truth. Deciding to turn pro. So how do you break free from this cycle? How do you stop being an amateur and start being a pro? According to Pressfield, it all comes down to a single moment, a single decision. The decision to turn pro. Here's what's beautiful about this. Turning pro is free. You don't need to buy anything, take a course, or get anyone's permission. You don't need special equipment, advanced degrees, or years of preparation. All you need to do is decide. Right now, in this moment, you can choose to turn pro. But while turning pro is free, it's not without cost. When you turn pro, you give up a life with which you may have become extremely comfortable. You give up a self that you've come to identify with and call your own. You give up the luxury of making excuses, of blaming circumstances, of waiting for the perfect moment. When you turn pro, everything changes. What time you get up changes. What time you go to bed changes. What you do with your days changes. What you read changes. What you eat changes. The shape of your body changes. Your relationships change. You literally become a different person. The professional shows up every day, regardless of how they feel. The professional stays on the job all day. The professional is committed over the long haul. The professional understands that success comes from consistency, not intensity. Here's what happens when you turn pro. You finally listen to that still, small voice inside your head. You find the courage to identify the secret dream or love or calling that you've known all along was your passion, your destiny. You acknowledge what you're most afraid of and you do it anyway. When you turn pro, you stop running from your fears. You turn around and face them. You stop fleeing into addictions, distractions, and shadow careers. You plant your feet, look resistance in the eye, and say, "Not today. Today I do the work." The professional mindset. How pros think and act. Let's talk about what it actually means to think and act like a professional. Because there are specific habits, attitudes, and approaches that separate pros from amateurs. First, the professional has a different relationship with their work. The amateur works when they feel like it. The professional works whether they feel like it or not. The amateur waits for inspiration. The professional knows that inspiration comes from doing the work, not the other way around. The professional shows up every single day. Rain or shine, motivated or not, inspired or not, the professional does the work. They understand that consistency trumps intensity every time. They know that small daily actions compound into extraordinary results over time. The professional is also patient. They understand that mastery takes time, that success is a long-term game. They're not looking for overnight success or instant gratification. They're willing to put in years of work for the chance at greatness. Here's something crucial. The professional works for the work itself, not for the external rewards. They don't write to become famous. They don't start a business just to make money. They don't create art just for recognition. They do the work because the work itself is meaningful, fulfilling, and aligned with who they are. This doesn't mean the professional doesn't want success or recognition. They do. But they understand that these things are byproducts of great work, not the goal of the work itself. When you focus on the work, the rewards follow. When you focus on the rewards, neither the work nor the rewards materialize. The professional also has a different relationship with failure. The amateur sees failure as evidence that they should quit. The professional sees failure as information, as part of the learning process. They understand that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone to success. The power of structure and routine. One of the most practical aspects of turning pro is creating structure in your life. Amateurs live chaotically, driven by moods and circumstances. Professionals create systems and routines that support their most important work. When you turn pro, you structure your hours not to flee from fear, but to confront it and overcome it. You plan your activities in order to accomplish your aims. You bring your will to bear so that you stick to your resolutions. This means creating sacred time for your most important work. It means protecting that time fiercely, treating it as non-negotiable. It means saying no to things that don't align with your professional priorities, even when those things seem urgent or important to others. The professional understands that discipline is not punishment, it's freedom. When you have the discipline to show up consistently, to do the work even when you don't feel like it, you create the conditions for breakthrough moments, for inspiration, for magic. Remember to subscribe. We're committed to bringing you transformative content every single day. Structure also means creating boundaries. The professional knows when to work and when not to work. They know when to push through resistance and when to rest and recover. They understand that sustainable excellence requires both intense effort and strategic recovery. Finding your true calling. One of the most profound questions Pressfield asks is this: what is your current life a metaphor for? He suggests that if you're dissatisfied with your current situation, you should look at what that situation symbolizes or points toward. For example, if you find yourself constantly daydreaming about starting a business while sitting in your corporate job, your dissatisfaction might be pointing you toward entrepreneurship. If you're always the one people come to for advice and support, maybe your calling is coaching or counseling. The key is to pay attention to what you're naturally drawn to, what energizes you, what you can't stop thinking about even when you try. Your true calling isn't usually something completely foreign to your current experience. It's often something that's been whispering to you for years. But here's the challenge. Your true calling is also probably the thing you're most afraid of. Why? Because it matters so much to you. Because failure would hurt more than anything else. Because success would mean you'd have to live up to a new identity, take on new responsibilities, become someone different than who you are today. Pressfield suggests that ambition, the desire to pursue your true calling, is the most primal and sacred fundament of our being. To feel ambition and act upon it is to embrace the unique calling of your soul. Not to act upon that ambition is to turn your back on yourself and on the reason for your existence. Overcoming the fear of judgment. One of the biggest obstacles to turning pro is the fear of what other people will think. We're terrified that if we pursue our dreams, people will judge us, criticize us, or think we're crazy. But here's the liberating truth that Pressfield shares. The tribe doesn't give a damn. There is no tribe, and there never was. That group of people whose approval you're desperately seeking, they're all just as scared and insecure as you are. Each person is so caught up in their own fears and struggles that they don't have time to worry about yours. When you truly understand that other people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are, you're free. You're free to pursue your dreams without constantly worrying about judgment or approval. This doesn't mean you should be reckless or ignore feedback from people you respect. But it does mean that you shouldn't let the fear of judgment stop you from pursuing what matters most to you. The people who truly care about you will support your growth, even if they don't understand it at first. Remember, the people who criticize others for taking risks and pursuing their dreams are usually the ones who are too afraid to take those risks themselves. Don't let their fear become your limitation. The transformation. What changes when you turn pro? When you make the decision to turn pro, the transformation that follows is nothing short of remarkable. It's not just about changing what you do, it's about changing who you are at the deepest level. First, you find your power. For the first time, maybe in your entire life, you stop being a victim of circumstances and start being the author of your own story. You realize that you have more control over your life than you ever imagined. You also find your will, that sense of drifting, of being at the mercy of moods and external forces that disappears. You develop an unshakable commitment to your craft, your mission, your vision for your life. You find your voice. You stop trying to be what everyone else wants you to be and start expressing your authentic self. Your unique perspective, your individual talents, your personal truth, these emerge and become the foundation of your work. Most importantly, you find your self-respect. You stop betraying yourself. You stop making excuses. You stop settling for less than what you're capable of. You become someone you can look at in the mirror and genuinely respect. The professional also experiences a profound simplification of life. When you're clear about your priorities, when you know what matters most, decision-making becomes much easier. You say yes to what serves your mission and no to everything else. Life becomes less dramatic but more fulfilling. The amateur thrives on chaos and crisis. The professional seeks stability and consistency. They understand that boring discipline creates exciting results. Practical steps to turn pro today. So how do you actually make this transformation? How do you move from amateur to professional starting right now? Here are the practical steps Pressfield recommends. First, stop. Just stop whatever distracting, time-wasting, soul-crushing activities you've been using to avoid your real work. Stop scrolling. Stop complaining. Stop making excuses. Stop waiting for permission or the perfect moment. Second, sit down and be still. In our hyper-connected world, we've lost the ability to be quiet with ourselves. But it's in the silence that you can hear your true calling. It's in the stillness that you can connect with what really matters. Third, listen. Can you hear it? That voice that's been trying to get your attention for years, maybe decades? The voice that's been telling you who you really are and what you're really meant to do. Listen to that voice. Fourth, choose. This is the moment of truth. Are you going to continue living as an amateur, driven by fear and resistance? Or are you going to commit to the professional path, with all its challenges and rewards? Finally, start. Don't wait until Monday. Don't wait until you have more resources or skills or confidence. Start today, right now with whatever you have. The professional knows that the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. The daily practice of professionalism. Turning pro isn't a one-time decision. It's a commitment you make fresh every single day. Like kicking a drug habit or stopping drinking, it requires daily recommitment to your new way of being. This means creating daily practices that reinforce your professional identity. It means showing up to do your most important work even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. The professional develops what Pressfield calls professional habits. These are the routines, disciplines, and standards that separate pros from amateurs. The amateur has amateur habits, they work sporadically, make excuses, and give up when things get difficult. The professional has professional habits. They show up consistently, take responsibility, and persist through challenges. Professional habits might include getting up early to work on your craft before the demands of the day take over, setting specific goals and deadlines for your projects, continuously learning and improving your skills, taking care of your physical and mental health so you can perform at your best, creating systems that support your most important work. The professional also trains like an athlete. Just as a runner builds stamina and technique through consistent training, the professional builds their creative and professional muscles through daily practice. They stretch their attention span consciously. They push outside their comfort zone to take real risks. They go deeper into every process involved with their craft. The compound effect of professional living. Here's what most people don't realize about turning pro. The benefits compound over time. Every day you show up as a professional, you're not just accomplishing today's work, you're building momentum, skill, and identity that will serve you for years to come. When you consistently act like a professional, you start to see yourself as a professional. And when you see yourself as a professional, you naturally start making decisions and taking actions that align with that identity. This creates a positive feedback loop. The more you act like a professional, the more professional results you get. The more professional results you get, the more confident you become. The more confident you become, the bigger risks you're willing to take. The bigger risks you take, the bigger rewards become possible. This is why Pressfield says that life gets very simple when you turn pro. You're no longer torn between different identities or constantly second-guessing yourself. You know who you are, what you're about, and what you need to do each day to move toward your goals. The professional also develops what psychologists call intrinsic motivation. They're driven by the satisfaction of the work itself rather than external rewards. This makes them incredibly resilient because their motivation doesn't depend on outside validation or immediate results. Embracing the hero's journey. What Pressfield is really describing is a version of the hero's journey, the timeless story of transformation that appears in myths and stories across all cultures. The amateur is the ordinary person living an ordinary life. The call to turn pro is the call to adventure. Resistance represents the trials and challenges that every hero must face. The beautiful thing about this journey is that it's available to everyone. You don't need to be born with special talents or circumstances. You don't need permission from anyone else. The only requirement is courage, the courage to answer the call, face the challenges, and become who you're meant to be. But like any hero's journey, turning pro requires sacrifice. You have to be willing to leave behind the safety and comfort of your current life. You have to be willing to face uncertainty, criticism, and the possibility of failure. You have to be willing to grow into a new version of yourself. The reward for taking this journey is nothing less than your authentic life. When you turn pro, you become who you always were but had been afraid to embrace and live out. You stop living someone else's version of success and start creating your own. Your moment is now. As we near the end of our journey through turning pro, I want you to feel the urgency of this moment. Right now, as you're listening to these words, you have a choice to make. You can continue living as an amateur, driven by fear and resistance, settling for a life that's almost what you want. Or you can choose to turn pro. Remember, turning pro is not for everyone. You have to be a little crazy to do it or even to want to. In many ways, the passage chooses you more than you choose it. You simply reach a point where you have no alternative, where the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of change. But if you're listening to this, if you've made it this far, chances are you're already feeling that call. That restless energy, that sense that there's something more for you, that feeling that you're meant for bigger things. That's not just wishful thinking. That's your soul trying to wake you up. The question is not whether you're ready. You'll never feel completely ready. The question is not whether you're good enough. You'll develop the skills you need along the way. The question is not whether you'll succeed. Success is guaranteed if you commit to the process and don't quit. The only question that matters is this: are you willing to turn pro? Are you willing to stop running from your fears and start running toward your dreams? Are you willing to give up the comfortable life of an amateur for the challenging, rewarding life of a professional? If your answer is yes, then everything changes starting now. You don't need to wait for Monday. You don't need to finish reading another book or take another course. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to decide and then start acting on that decision. The call to action. Here's what I want you to do right now, today, this very moment. First, identify what you've been running from. What's the work, the calling, the dream that scares you the most? That's probably your answer. That's probably what you need to turn pro in. Second, commit to showing up tomorrow. Not to being perfect, not to having all the answers, but to showing up and doing something, anything that moves you toward your goal. The professional knows that progress is more important than perfection. Third, structure your day around your most important work. If writing is your calling, write first thing in the morning before you check email. If starting a business is your dream, spend the first hour of your day working on that business plan. Make your professional work the priority, not the afterthought. Fourth, eliminate or minimize the activities that keep you in amateur mode. Stop consuming endless content about your field and start creating. Stop talking about what you're going to do and start doing it. Stop waiting for the perfect conditions and start working with what you have. Finally, remember that you're not alone in this journey. Every professional, from the Nobel Prize winner to the successful entrepreneur to the accomplished artist, has walked this same path. They've all faced the same fears, the same resistance, the same moments of doubt. The only difference between them and the people who remain amateurs is that they decided to turn pro and then backed up that decision with consistent action. Remember to subscribe for daily motivation and practical wisdom. We're here to support you on your professional journey every step of the way. The path of the professional is not easy, but it's simple. Show up every day. Do the work. Face your fears. Trust the process. And remember that every single day you choose to act like a professional, you're not just building a career or achieving goals, you're becoming who you were always meant to be. Your amateur days are over. Your professional life begins now. The only question is, what are you going to create with it? This is your moment. This is your call. The person you're meant to become is waiting on the other side of this decision. All you have to do is turn pro. And remember, when you do turn pro, when you make that commitment and start living it every single day, you'll look back on this moment as the day everything changed. The day you stopped being a victim of circumstances and became the hero of your own story. The day you found your power, your will, your voice, and your self-respect. The day you finally came alive. Now go turn pro. Your authentic life is waiting.